So let's get back to our functions and let's see what we have prepared for this webinar. So if we go again to the file where we have all the functions created, so we have the token request, refresh token, get data, which we have just used. And here is the basic list of the functions. So to give you an idea about what we're going to do right now, let's go to the IP fabric first. In the IP fabric, there's a lot of settings you can apply to your snapshots. So it starts as IP addresses or subnets that you can exclude or include from discovery. It also starts with the information that you want to provide as a seed entry point for your discovery. And there's all other settings that you can do. You can change the snapshot settings, SSH, and telnet settings. We have the API information in the 3.5.0 version. Config management, you can do certificate changes, SNMP, etc. There's a lot of ways how you can change your settings just through the API. So it's completely flexible system that you can operate through the API. That's very important. So now let's get back to our functions. And the first we're going to do, we will be changing the seed. The seed is extremely important for any discovery. If you don't provide any seed information, the discovery starts automatically from its default gateway, if it's the first discovery. If it's not the first discovery, it will try to use previously discovered devices as a seed point automatically. Okay. Playing with the seed and IP filter options is extremely useful when you want to target minor snapshot to a different locations or for different specific subnets, and you want to change it on the go. So let's go ahead and let's play with the functions. So first is going to be the simple get seed information. Right now we have the seed empty, so we can see and put some dummy seed like 10, 10, 10, 10, whatever. We save that. So the get seed information is a very simple function. We only calling the get request towards the settings and seed in the API. Here we are just checking if the response is okay. If the response is okay, we print the text response, which will be the list of the IP addresses that are currently in the seed. So let's try that. We go to the console and we call it the get seed function. What we need to input is the server and the headers. And the response is there's one IP address sitting in the seed right now, which we can confirm in the GUI. Now, we maybe want to update the seed information, which can be extremely useful when we want to, for example, create a minor snapshot with just group of devices in the IP fabric. And what I would recommend to do, if you want to just focus strictly on some group of devices, put those devices into the seed, make sure you discover those, and put those devices into the IP include list as well. So you will narrow down the scope automatically to only those IP addresses that are in the seed. So let's update the seed information, and first let's have a quick look on the functions themselves. So the first is the update seed. For the update seed, we will use the post request, which will only update the seed information. So if there's any other remaining seed IP addresses, it will only add more to that. Then there's another way how you can update a seed, and you can rewrite it completely with the put request. The put request will completely rewrite the data with the new information. So let's play with that. In our settings, we can modify the seed information with the following seed, pay seed 2. It's a simple list of IP addresses, which I will use as a payload for the update seed request. So update seed. And the first is server, which is going to be the same, the headers, and the pay seed 2. And we get a response that the seed was updated with those 3 IP addresses. Now let's get a seed again. to see if it changed. And we see that it actually did. So we have one IP address at the end and 3 more IP addresses. Now let's try to do the same with the rewrite seed. So we're going to do rewrite server headers, and we will use the same payload. So we see that the seed information was modified, and see what we get. I'm going to again call the get seed function, and you can see that it changed because with the rewrite seed, we removed the last IP completely. Now let's have a look at how we can get all other additional settings from the IP fabric. For getting the settings information, we have again created a simple get requests towards API v1 settings. It will get us all the information about how the IP fabric is set up with all the data. So let's call it and see on our own. I'm going to call get settings. And again, we need to define a server and the headers. And this is the information we have. If we do, let's say g equals get settings, server and the headers, we can play with the response so we can see what or how the data looks like when they're encoded into JSON. And when they are in the JSON, we can ask for keys. So we can see the keys. We have credentials, privileges, and we have the networks as well. So if we just want to know what networks are included or excluded from discovery when we start a snapshot, we can ask this way. We can, of course, verify the same in IP Fabric GUI, which you usually don't do when you're playing with API, but we can check. So the system is telling us that we have this IP address excluded, and we include everything. So we go to the settings, advanced, and here it is, the exact same information. So what I want to do right now is to update the seed with only 2 devices, update the include list only with the same 2 devices, and I want to start a minor snapshot through the API. So the devices selected are these 2 devices with these 2 IP addresses. So I'm going to take those IPs and place them to the seed as well. We don't need to use the mask. So the payload for changing the seed IP addresses will be this one. And we want to rewrite it completely because we want to get rid of all the information we have in the seed right now. So we're going to call that seed. And we're going to rewrite it. And we want to rewrite it with the actual pay seed 1. Okay. When we get seed, we get exact information. And now what I want to do is to change the settings of the IP fabric. And now let's have a quick look at the function again. There's one important thing I want to show you. So when we get into settings, we are using the get request, which is just a request for information from the API. Here's the quite a different function. It just gets the settings, and it will show you, or write a response. If the response is okay, it will show you just the networks, which we can use later on. It's just a slight modification of the get settings. Then look at the update settings. I mean, spot the difference. There's a different type of request. This is not get or post or put. This is a patch request. With a patch request, what we do, we only modify what we have on the API. The good thing about it is that we don't need to send to the API settings all the information that are in the settings. We just need to send what we want to modify. Because if we have a quick look at the JSON payload for the patch request, it can look like in this way. So there's boundaries, a safe config, BGP limit, network settings, resolving name, a scanner, a trace route, etc. With the patch request, we don't need to define all this information in the JSON payload. We just need to use maybe the subset of information we need to modify. In this case, we will modify the networks. So we'll go back to our settings. And what I will do, I will use just this payload to patch the settings we have in IP Fabric. So to get the list of the IP addresses that are included and excluded in the settings, I will use the function getSettingsNet to see. And this is what I see. The exclude is this list, and the include, we include everything. Now I'm going to define the settings for changing, the payload for changing the settings. And I'm going to change the settings. And we see it was modified successfully. And let's see. We see we don't exclude anything right now, and we include only these two IP addresses for the next discovery. So now let's get to starting the snapshot via API. And first, the function I created for observing the snapshots over the API is the getSnapshot. With the getSnapshot, we simply get the number of snapshots that are right now in the IP Fabric, and we can see all the details on our own. So let's have a look. I'm going to call the getSnapshot with a server and headers. And a simple response, there are right now 9 available snapshots. So right now I want to see what else I have in the response. And this is a lot of information, so maybe just have a look at the keys in the JSON. Sorry. Oh, I forgot. The response we have is not a dictionary, it's a list. So let's have a look at the first available snapshot. Okay. And here's the information. Here we have the ID. This is the name, exactly the one that we have in our GUI. The running false, that's important. Once we start a snapshot, we're going to call the function again to see if there are any running snapshots. And especially when you are creating a snapshot that's going to take longer than a couple of minutes, you want to make sure once you initiate a snapshot that there's no other snapshot running at the moment, because it can delay your snapshot initiation. So let's start a snapshot. The snapshot initiation or starting the snapshot is very easy, like everything else with IP Fabric. You send a simple post request with no payload, just the header and the API endpoint, and it will automatically start a snapshot with the global settings that you have applied. So let's start a snapshot. Start snapshot, server, headers. Let's see what we get. I'm gonna assign it. I'm gonna create a variable and assign it the response so I can see what we have in the response when we start a snapshot. Let's call it a T, and let's start. So we have started the snapshot successfully. What we get is just the message from the function. We can go to the GUI. Let's see on our own. Right. So we have started a snapshot. We have 2 IP addresses remaining, and nothing else is going to be discovered because we have just placed 2 IP addresses into the seed and into the include list as well. So right now I'm going to call get snapshot again, and we see that the number increased. That's very important. And I'm going to call I'm going to ask, what is the last snapshot again? So last snapshot right now, it's running, and we should be seeing, stay discovering. Okay. Running false or running true. That's very important because we know that the snapshot hasn't finished yet. We have the time of the start and we have the snapshot ID. So we can check again. State loaded, log false, running false. It seems that our snapshot was created. We have 2 devices. And yeah, that's it. Let's verify in the GUI. All right, it's true. Our snapshot was created within 36 seconds, and we have exactly 2 devices that we wanted to have in the snapshot.